Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me once again, Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cameron?
Hey, what's going on?
What's going on? Hot off of our Spider-Man 2 spoiler cast last week, we're going to be playing a little bit of catch-up on other things that we've been watching or playing in the last couple weeks. So today we're going to be talking about Cameron's time watching Fall of the House of Usher. I finished the games Sea of Stars and Starfield. So I'll talk about those, and Cameron also talked about, or we'll talk about is it a new anime,
Yeah, it's
Frieren,
new.
or is it just like
It's new.
okay, Frieren Beyond Journey's End.
Yep.
So we'll do Fall of House of Usher, Sea of Stars, Frieren, and Starfield. So yeah, that's gonna be what we chat about today. If you like what you hear, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast everywhere you can, all that fun stuff. So Cam, tell me about Fall of the House of Usher. I've caught like bits of it here and there when you
Yeah.
were watching it out in the living room, and I was just sitting there eating dinner. I'm not much of a horror guy, so I didn't like actively pay attention or anything like that, but I'm a fan of both the Edgar Allan Poe short story Fall of the House of Usher, as well as the Ray Bradbury like Usher 2, I think is actually what it's called, where basically it's like a Martian Chronicles thing, where a guy it's a similar to, this has nothing to do with the show, I'm sure, but it's a similar kind of thing to like Fahrenheit 451, where like literature has been banned, but this guy who loved Poe and loved the Fall of the House of Usher basically like builds a mansion on Mars to take revenge on all of his biggest enemies in themed ways tied to different Edgar Allan Poe short stories, and he calls it the House of Usher.
That's
And
pretty awesome. I didn't know that.
yeah, and so like somebody, he poisoned, like I think an inspector comes out and basically like decides to shut the whole thing down. He gets poisoned via the cask of Amontillado. The like a couple other things happen. I think one's based on like the Telltale Heart kind of thing,
Mhm.
and like the whole thing, he lets the investigator kind of get his report off so that it's going to be like destroyed and and ruined, and he and his like servant leave while his other like party goers are in the house, and it crushes and collapses, a la Fall of the House of Usher. So
Nice.
so yeah, it's I remember reading that in like middle school and being like, this is really cool, I like this. And like it was one of those first times I ever saw like accomplished writer in his own right kind of riffing on another accomplished writer.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, an early fan fiction-y kind of thing that I was exposed to. But this Fall of the House of Usher is by the guy who's done a whole bunch of Netflix things,
Yep.
whose name I'm going to...
He's Mike Flanagan.
Mike Flanagan, there you
Yep.
go. So how was this? How versed are you in the Flanagan verse? Have you watched a lot of the other stuff?
Oh yeah, I've seen everything else that
Okay.
he's done. Gerald's Game was kind of like his first debut on Netflix with his movie. It was about a couple that are on an away trip getting frisky, and he has a heart attack and dies while she's tied up and can't help him, and so he dies, and it's basically her like going through like dehydration and other stuff, and like having to like confront interpersonal demons. It's quite good. His stuff is always really well thought out and well written. There's always like a lot of like fun things that he does with it, and he's not afraid to kind of get weird with stuff. One of my so he has done that. He did the Haunting of Bly Manor. He did the there's two Haunting Mansion shows that he's done. In fact, I don't wonder if they're both called Bly Manor. One of them, anyway.
I'm pulling it up here.
Yeah.
Because like I know him / his work via Rahul Kohli, obviously from the Kind of Funny kind of like community and whatnot. Haunting of Bly Manor and Midnight Mass was the other one. Haunting of Hill House.
Hill House, yeah. So Hill House was the first big series that he did. I mean, you get like this is where you start to see him. The leads in Gerald's Game are taken, like basically come in back in, and he uses a lot of the same actors. And Rahul Kohli got the role in Bly Manor, and ever since then he's been in stuff. Um, and he's like everyone is just always phenomenal. It's always really really good. Um, and like they're real human stories, kind of caught up in these bigger things. In Hill House and Bly Manor are both about like families. Hill House is more so about like an actual like centralized family, and Bly Manor being more about like the family that you find, not the family that you necessarily have. Midnight Mass, of course, is the like Salem's Lot. Like it's basically like his Salem's Lot. It's very very good, um, and deals a lot with like analyzing analyzing through a lens of vampirism and horror, like Stephen King level, like Stephen King flavors of horror.
Mm-hmm.
Analyzing like religion and belief and faith.
Yeah, I didn't realize he had done Doctor Sleep.
Yeah, he did Doctor Sleep. Yep.
Written and directed that one a couple years back. Cool.
Yeah, he's absolutely phenomenal. I will say Fall of the House of Usher is probably like his least the only one that's probably least horror is Gerald's Game. The other, like, this is very much not his this is very much not a quote unquote scary one. It really is more of the vein of Poe, of it being like intrigue and suspense and mystery, and you know it's the fear of the unknown, not necessarily what they're showing you. And it starts off with Roderick Usher, who's the head of a. It's funny because from the previews and stuff, it makes it look like they're like a crime family. Like Rahul especially is like super tatted up on his neck and stuff, and so you think, oh man, they're like mafioso. It's like, oh no, they're the worst kind of crime people. They are a family of like pharmaceutical people. They're like the Purdue family. Purdue family for like pharmacy, like the opioid crisis.
Mm-hmm.
The people behind like all of that. And it's very much in the same vein. Like this is very much telling like a story of this house built on the back of this very intimidating, powerful force named Roderick Usher. And the it like starts off with it being like over the next few weeks, like we'll like show who these people are and how they're all connected to everything. And then it goes to fast forwards like toward the very end where it shows that like I'm not spoiling anything. This is all in the first like 15-20 minutes of the first episode. But it shows all the kids have been killed. All of them are dead. And so the prosecutor gets called by Roderick Usher to come to a dilapidated house to talk to him about, and he's like, I'm going to like bring a recorder. I'm going to confess everything to you. And so it's very much, their conversation is kind of like the meta narrative device for him to kind of like detail the death of each of his children and what led to each of their deaths, which is confusing for the prosecutor because he's like, well, some of your kids died from accidents. And he goes, there were no accident. And it builds up kind of like the suspense of this, it's a very good and very like, it gets its hooks in you very early on. And the best part is like Roderick is being haunted by the ghosts of his children. And so each time he's talking about each of his children, you see like their ghost in the background somewhere. And like giving you little hints of how they died up until they show up and you get to see the full picture of how they died. Super well done. Brilliant camera work. Love the effects they used. They used very like minor special effects to make it work. And just when you think, are they going to get this post story in there? They squeeze it in. It's so good. It's so good. I cannot like tell people enough that it's like, if you were like, hey, I can't do the scary of like the hauntings or like Midnight Mass, I can't do that kind of scary, I say this is for you. This is very much like I said, told you, it's far less about horror and the fright, and it's far more about the suspense and wanting to know what happens next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen like people online basically being like, this is very light on jump scares, which is very much like the tension I'm not looking to feel, and the handful of things that like I kind of overheard slash while watching, like one of the episodes I probably heard the most from was Rahul, the Rahul centric one, I think, or I imagine it's a Rahul centric, because he was obviously in it a lot as like the video game character,
Yeah, he's
video game
that.
publisher character.
Yeah.
And just the like Bruce Greenwood would go on like monologues, and I just like not even watching, just hearing the monologue and be like, God damn, Bruce Greenwood is good.
He's so good.
He is really good at just the stuff.
This is for
Mike Flanagan, real good writing. In particular, the what I'm thinking about is the whole like when life gives you lemons
yes,
speech that he did.
It's so goddamn good. This is definitely Bruce Greenwood's, like, this is his time to shine. He's so unbelievably good. His range in the show is insane. And what's also really great is that you get, and you're like, man, I really wish that they had maybe this actor or this actress that is kind of like known for being in Mike Flanagan stuff. And then all of a sudden it shoots you back to the 1970s and they're in it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, okay, here we go. So awesome stuff all around. And like, man, they just, every time they set something up, you don't have to wait till the end of the show to get the payoff. By the end of that episode, the payoff is probably going to come through. And if not, it's going to be coming through in a couple of episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Just phenomenal. So like a big thing about Roger Usher is that like he kind of hints at it and then like confirms it basically that like he's a bastard, like he was born out of wedlock. And he makes a point of it. And this is how they get around like casting whoever they want.
Mm-hmm.
They get around it by saying basically like Roger Usher.
A lot of illegitimate children.
Yeah. A lot of illegitimate children that he is outright legitimizing the moment that the paternity test comes through. The moment that he gets a positive paternity test, that's his kid. And he makes a point that his doors are open to you immediately. Which is because of his vast wealth and the corrupt nature of his business and everything around him isn't good for especially the younger, like one of the characters is like 26 and has like got it, like has been acknowledged as his kid for 10 years. So he got in when he was 16. And it had like, you see why he is the way he is because of that. Just like the excess amounts of money and power and drugs and everything else. And it's great. By the way, I will put out a trigger warning. There is a ton of drug use in this show. There is an insane amount of drug use. Most notably, Rahul's character. Mm-hmm. Leo has so much drug use. It's insane.
Yeah. I've also heard real good things about Mark Hamill's performance in this.
Mark Hamill is a character named Arthur Pym, and they're calling him the Pym Reaper. He wears like a it's not like a full fedora, but it's also not a Tremblay, but it's just like a nice hat. He wears like he talks deep and raspy and like this, and like he's so good. And then they reveal like some stuff about him. It's like, yeah, he was part of the whole thing that was like in the 80s, like wandering around the world, like traveling everywhere around the world. And it's like, yeah, no, people wouldn't know that about him. And like, but they build up mystery around him because he's this mysterious, like he's in a courtroom or he's in chambers. And instead of like going over notes or preparing legal documents, he just has a crossword on a paper that he's filling out. So when the prosecutor is giving this big oration about like these are dirtbags, criminals, awful people, over there, Arthur Pym not even phased, just finishing his crossword, and it's just like you're like, that's like he's extremely intimidating, and great.
Nice. How many episodes is this? 8?
Yeah, it's only 8 episodes.
8 episodes?
Yeah, 8 episodes, roughly an hour long.
Is it kind of structured like one episode per kid?
Exactly.
Kind of thing? Okay.
One episode per
family member.
Progeny, because it's 7 kids and 1 grandkid. So.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I mean, heard lots of great things about it. It's been much like, gaming, it's been a good year for entertainment. Apart from obviously all the job losses and whatnot and the strikes that have kept a lot of people out of work, big bummers there. But
this means it's going to be a difficult year next year.
Yeah. The products we've been getting, because of like the time cycle, and a lot of these obviously being like, projects that were either heavily worked on during the pandemic or like, coming out of the pandemic, even though obviously we're still in a pandemic, because even though they're, going to say it's not a pandemic, there's still plenty of people getting COVID all the time.
Our COVID numbers rarely go down.
Yeah.
So,
but glad to hear this one came out so well. Maybe I will have to sit down and check it out. I don't currently have like a Netflix, and they keep jacking up the prices, so I'm more and more less and less inclined to go ahead and like re-up a Netflix. But
we can always put mine on your like your Xbox or something.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing of like, maybe we either we split it, or I'll let enough stuff pile up that I'm like, okay, I'll do 1 month and I'm gonna just burn through a whole bunch of stuff. But
you let me use your HBO Max, so
yeah. Cool. All right. Well, then, any final thoughts on Fall of the House of Usher?
Yeah, it's incredible. Bruce Greenwood, give that man a goddamn Emmy. Like, he's so goddamn good on it.
Nice. How does Flanagan's stuff usually do? I feel like because it's horror, it usually gets overlooked. Is that a fair assessment? Like, I always hear critical praise and everybody loves it, but like when it comes to
award season, he gets snubbed a lot.
Yeah.
Just because like his like. It's really upsetting when you think about it, because it's the same reason why Stephen King didn't get a lot of accolades until the 90s.
Yeah.
Even though his stuff was like best-selling stuff throughout the 70s and 80s, it wasn't until the 90s when he got like critical acclaim in the masses, because his stuff was in horror. And horror writing, like horror books, are even more niche than horror movies.
Yeah.
So yeah, like when it comes to that sort of thing, I look at it and I just think that, yeah, he's definitely probably going to get snubbed again. It's super upsetting when you think about it, because especially Midnight Mass. Midnight Mass has like some career-defining performances in it. Like Rahul's like monologue about being a cop, like joining the police after 9/11 as a Muslim to try to like make things right in the world, and him talking about a real thing that happened to real Muslim cops in New York, in the New York Police Department, is so devastatingly heartbreaking that if you didn't know that it was true, you'd think, wow, that was crazy that he came up with that. Like Flanagan came up with that idea. It's like, no. And Rahul delivers on it. Rahul himself is not Muslim. But like there's also moments that I was noticing, like there's a cookout at one point, and Rahul's character is just holding an empty plate while everybody else has food on it. And it's because when he was looking over the table, he like walks away after not being able to get anything. And I think it was Timur Hussein from GameSpot who talked about like he knows that experience, because you go to like a group cookout thing and then you look at it and everything's haram.
Yeah. Everything's got like bacon grease.
Yeah. Everything's got some sort of like grease, or it's also being served on the same table as something that's haram. So it's no longer halal, which means if you're being devout, you can't eat it. It's a pretty strict, the kosher status of foods, like it's a very strict dietary code that they live by. And so like that was just like a nice touch that Mike Flanagan and Rahul Cooley put to that scene, which also shows that despite them being outwardly like, yeah, of course we love that we have a Muslim, brown-skinned sheriff, they don't take other things like that into consideration for him.
Yeah.
It's the platitudes, but not the actual follow through.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's really, really good.
Nice.
His stuff is great. And Fall of House of Usher, I don't think it's as good as Midnight Mass. Midnight Mass, I think, is still like his best work. But then again, I also come from like a very religious background. So like the analysis of religion and kind of like the deconstruction around it is that he does in that show is just like speaks to me very deeply. So that might be it. Other people might be like, as some like, but also like the world of the Ushers and the Fall of the House of Usher is so foreign to me. Like it might as well be sci-fi. Like one dude has a bowling alley in his house, and I'm like, that's like a sci-fi thing for me. I have no concept of somebody having something like a bowling lane installed in a home. Like that's so weird and foreign to me.
That's way too much money.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then I will segue us over into Sea of Stars. So I had finished this, I think. Basically, I had finished it and would have been ready to talk about it if you didn't finish Spider-Man 2 last week in time for like us to just do a spoiler cast. Sea of Stars. Full disclosure, I backed at like a a tier in which I'm like a top backer, kind of in the game. Credited. I have a big old statue of me. That's a fun little thing you can find in the game. Um, and I backed it because I was such a big fan of The Messenger when that came out by Sabotage Studio. So I've been looking forward to Sea of Stars for a long time. I think I had done a couple, like a Let's Play or two of like kind of the demos that they released to backers, over the course of things. Um, so it was kind of a fun thing. Like I would occasionally, I'm never in Discord, but I would occasionally get like pinged in their Discord channel with like updates and like here's a new animated GIF that we're releasing to the backers and stuff like that. I was like, neat, and cool, and I would like just kind of loosely follow along, but uh, I was very much just kind of excited for the style and the largely like the complete kind of change up in gameplay. Messenger was very much like a Ninja Gaiden-esque game. Like that was very much, it was wearing that influence on its sleeve. And it was a cool vibe of side-scrolling platformer where they play around with the idea of like switching between an 8-bit world and a 16-bit world kind of in the design and mechanics and stuff like that. Um, and so this being like a complete shift to a more Chrono Trigger esque, RPG or Super Mario RPG kind of gameplay, I was very excited for, and just to kind of see them switch up the art style like that, but also like it takes place in the same world as The Messenger, and it's basically like a long before prequel kind of thing. So it was going to be a how do they kind of play with that, and how do they kind of
Hmm.
seed in ideas that will become a thing in The Messenger, stuff like that. And they do a great job with that.
Do they?
They're
Okay.
they're throughout it. I mean, the one of the biggest things, my takeaways from it was like, I really want to go back and play The Messenger to see how like some of these items and some of these elements like are like, some of them are very apparent in kind of the like, okay, these characters are going off and will become this boss in The Messenger and kind of thing. And then others are more just like, the lore is going to carry on and be kind of morphed and changed over the generations between now and The Messenger, and how do they become into like this kind of story beat in The Messenger. But they do a great job of just kind of like laying out a lot of those ideas and setting up certain things. And there were some where like I I don't I don't have like a deep remembrance and like affinity for The Messenger, in terms of like I don't remember every detail of that game, but like there's a point in this game where you start kind of going into areas from The Messenger, but now in like a, instead of a side scroller kind of beat 'em up structure, or side scrolling platformer, you're viewing them in a like isometric top down kind
Hmm.
of thing. So like even just visually, there's like a cool fun element there, but then also most importantly, like immediately hearing some of those tunes and being like, yes, I remember this theme and playing this theme for X amount of hours, because obviously a game inspired by like 8-bit 16-bit chip tunes is like you're going to hear that song over and over and over and over again. So those moments where like the music just like synced up. As we touched on, just a few days ago, I'm not really the music guy,
Yeah.
um, but hearing those, especially in like the video game space, was really cool. Um, for those that aren't familiar, in this game, you're playing as a pair of Solstice warriors, who Valere and Zale. And in The Messenger, like one of the kind of dungeons you go to is basically like touches on how in the past there used to be solstice warriors, like one who kind of like born of the summer solstice, and one born of the winter solstice. One kind of controls power of the sun, power of the moon kind of thing. And so basically your characters, and you can kind of choose which one you want to kind of drive as, Zale or Valere. Doesn't really make any bearing on the story. It's just which one do you want to control, and you can change
Hmm.
it at any time really. um, And so yeah, you're kind of, you're basically like prophesied children that, leave when you're 10 years old. You go off to, training at, probably not even 10, but you go off to like train at the, academy in the sky
Mm-hmm.
to, build up your powers and stuff. Your best buddy Garl is excited to like see you off. And Garl's, one of the best characters in this game. I know you've played a little bit of it. So when you guys kindly finally come of age and kind of like return down to earth, you're set off a quest to, rid the world of its big evils and stuff. And Garl, even though he doesn't have the powers, he kind of insists on coming along. He's going to be your warrior cook, is what he is. And he's like, the way he's just written, he's just like endless positivity and joy, and he's such a delight. And like his charisma is what he brings to the table, while like your other two characters are kind of the big heavy hitters and can
Mm-hmm.
kind of do all of the like the magical things that they need to do. He's very much the guy who's making friends in every town you go to and helping kind of um,
Awesome.
coordinate all that stuff, and he just has a beautiful fun arc over the course of the game. You pick up a couple other allies over the duration. Six total characters that can join you and serve in your party. um, in combat, you have a party of three. But once you have more than those three people, you can basically swap anybody out at any time. It's a la Final Fantasy X, basically. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and Yeah, it's just a lot of fun. There's a couple of cool little mechanics where, um, when you hit somebody normally, you'll get what's called live mana that kind of like sprinkles out around the ground, and you can basically use that to absorb, like another character can absorb that live mana, up to three balls of it basically, to add like their elemental essence to an attack. So there might be an enemy that is actually like immune to magic or immune to like the physical attacks, but if you hit them, you get live mana, and then you like use that live mana attack, they're vulnerable, they're weak to that kind of thing. So there's a lot of like interesting little strategic stuff to play around with there.
I felt like it was a very much different than like it's something that I put down because I wasn't in the mood for something that was requiring like it's stupid that I say this, that was requiring like that much input from me when I was playing an RPG.
Mm-hmm.
Then I went into Lies of P right after, like instead. So
Uh-huh.
it's like, oh yeah, I wasn't looking for something that was that active, and then I proceeded to play the Soulsborne game this year. It's like,
Yeah. No, you just have a type, Kim.
uh,
I will say, on in that vein, there are a series of amulets that you can collect throughout the game that are either like, a couple are kind of given to you up front, like the amulet of storytelling, and they're going to be kind of your accessibility, approachability kind of things. Of like, okay, the amulet of storytelling will, at the end of every fight, your health will be kind of fully restored, so you don't need to delve too deep into the cooking mechanic to like cook meals that you'll use to heal yourself up. That's kind of like, instead of, I mean, you can go and like buy, you're not buying potions, but you basically are buying meals that are giving heal your HP and MP. Um, but most likely you're foraging around the map and the levels that you're kind of walking through. There will be like, some lettuce and some grains, and you can fish, and you can, you'll occasionally get like meat from, enemies that die, that are, were like a chicken or something like that. So you'll get ingredients over the course of the game, and at any save point basically, you start a campfire and you can cook, and so you can have like up to 10 meals kind of in your inventory at a time that will be some variation of healing HP and MP. MP just naturally will
mhm.
restore like three magic points per just hitting somebody. So you can kind of like use an ability or two, and then you basically like build your MP back up by just doing normal attacks, or those live mana attacks kind of thing. Um, there will be occasionally, when like a boss is going to do, or an enemy is going to do like a special attack, there'll be little icons on the screen that are called locks. And it'll be like, a sword and a hammer and a sun. And so if you are able to break each of those locks before the turn counter turns up. So maybe you've got those three things and 2 turns to eliminate them. So if you use Zale, whose normal attack is a sword attack, but you power him up with the mana thing,
Yep.
it brings in the sun, so his attack can knock out the sword and the sun, and then you can use Valair or Garl's normal attack is a mallet kind of thing. So they'll kind of do the blunt attack, and basically, if you can knock out all of those, the enemy just kind of like loses their attack for that turn, and basically like
Yep.
goes back
It's
into
cool.
into kind of the new rotation.
It reminds me of Grandia 2's
Mhm.
battle system.
Yeah.
In like using that stagger effect to push people's turns back.
Yep.
It's really cool.
Yep. I didn't play Grandia, but it was that Ubi art game,
Child of Light.
Child of Light. Yeah, did a similar thing. And yeah, there's one character you get later that kind of has like an ability specifically that will delay a character's turn. So you can so if they they've got 3 things but only like 1 turn to hit them, and it's like that's not possible. You can use that character to like delay their turn, and suddenly their turn counter goes up to 4. So now you've got like a little bit of breathing room to take out that stuff. And if you don't fully break the locks, it does still weaken whatever the actual attack is going to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a cool like it's not, if you're like, oh, I'm not going to be able to do anything, there's still like a chance to help for partially doing it. Similar to Super Mario RPG, there are like mechanics where if you hit hit an attack and time a button prompt right, you'll do an extra attack, or multiple extra attacks. Or the same for like defense. If you kind of defend and push the button at the right moment, you'll take less damage. So yeah, lots of fun little lots of fun to be had in the combat there. And as I was saying, like a lot of amulets kind of that you can pick up or purchase over the course of the game that will kind of make things a little easier, a little bit more manageable, that you can kind of toggle on and off at any time. Yeah, just an overall fun time. Beautiful art style, beautiful music, and lots of great little humor to it. And much like The Messenger had, the writing from writer Thierry Belanger, just lots of good stuff. Lots of wit and well-drawn characters, like characters that have great motivations. Even like the bad guys kind of have like a fun element to them in terms of like you understand why they are doing the things they're doing. And yeah, just an all-around good time. It's probably right now sitting in my top 5 for the year. It was good. Probably put 36 hours into it or something, and I 100%ed it. I got the platinum
Nice.
for it, and that included one of the trophies that was like the pain in the butt hard trophy. Is one of the amulets you can get is kind of the inverse of like making your life easier. It will I don't remember, it's like the amulet of a gambit or something like that. And it's basically like it reduces your health by 95%. Enemies cannot be damaged while they're casting a spell, so you have to like break the lock before you'll do any damage to them. You can still hit them, it'll just do 0 damage, and you can still get the mana points and stuff, but like they won't take any damage. If you block an attack with like the perfect parry kind of timing, it'll only do 1 damage. So that's like the trade-off to like you're super weak now, and you have all these other things. And there's a trophy that's basically like kill 10 of the bosses while wearing that amulet.
What? That's intense.
So yeah, but fortunately, it like, and you get the amulet like on the far back half of the game, so there probably aren't even 10 bosses left by the time you get it to do it. So it's very much designed for like a new game plus kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And what I ended up doing was basically I played the new game plus, and you don't have to have it. You can turn the amulet off in between boss fights, so you only need it on for the boss fight. And so New Game Plus, I'm like crushing every normal enemy here and there as I get to a boss fight, and then when I get to the boss fight, I put the amulet on. even, in those early games, I'm still overpowered because I'm like level 22 or whatever from the end game of the previous run. So I can take out a boss, those early bosses in like a couple turns, maybe. Um, so you basically like I new game plussed and did that through like the first 7 bosses, and then I started another new game plus off of that save, and then did it for like the first 3 bosses again, and that count for the 10 count. So and that was the last trophy I needed for it, I think. Or no, I ended up doing it. I knew I was going to need that trophy. There's also like a good ending and or there's an ending and then like the good ending when you 100% everything. So
Mhm.
I timed it, or I did it out specifically. I beat the game, new game plus, and got those, killing the boss things, and then I went back and reloaded my end game save, did all the 100% stuff, and got the good ending for it. And so yeah, that was my platinum run on Sea of Stars. Lots of fun, really good game, and um, beautiful story. The like good ending is definitely the way to go.
Okay.
It's a significantly better ending and has just a few extra cool story beats alongside it. And in order to like unlock the good ending, it's going to do that thing of like, classic JRPGs or a lot of like Final Fantasies of like, okay, you've got to do a lot of these like extra optional bosses, or you've got to
Sure.
do the like, collect 60 of the hidden things that will give you, extra rewards and stuff over the course of the game. And so those challenges ended up being some of the best and most fun fights of the game as it was. So I found myself glad and wanting to have done those extra things,
Yeah.
um, to see how kind of it all paid off. So yeah, shout out to Sea of Stars. Lots of good stuff there. And I just, again, can't wait to see whatever Sabotage Studio does next. And depending on how I'm sitting financially, I will most likely back it again.
I know you took my. That was. I was gonna ask. I was like, would you back their next game? It sounds like you would.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I've no like, unless I am like really tight on finances or whatever, and watching my wallet. Uh, like this one, it is interesting because I backed it, and then ultimately it comes out and it's, I think it's like the first game that came out to Game Pass and PlayStation Plus, basically like at the same time at launch.
mhm.
So like if you have PlayStation Plus, I think extra or above, or Game Pass, you can play it on those systems, and wouldn't have had to pay a dime compared to the amount of money I paid to have a statue of me in the game. But yeah, it's still a lot of fun. I think part of my backer means eventually I'll get like some physical things, but I think they're like hung up in the supply chain right now. So, but yeah, great game all around. And again, I like, there were a lot of beats, especially late in the game, where you start seeing kind of like a lot of the pieces come into play, where I'm like, oh, like I know exactly how that ties into the messenger, even though the messenger is, a little foggier for me. And but like there are just a lot of moments where like, now that this is very fresh in my mind, I want to sit down and play the messenger if I have some time, just to see if I can find other like little things that I overlooked or missed. So um, yeah, it is a prequel done right. Definitely, absolutely.
Cool.
Uh,
I didn't. Keep on forgetting that's supposed to be a prequel to Messenger because like what I know from the Messenger is very much like not like doesn't fit within that realm. But I know so little about the Messenger as well. I just
mhm.
know gameplay what it looks like,
Yeah,
and it's
uh,
like Ninja Gaiden esque.
yeah,
So
exactly. And that's the thing. It is a prequel in lore and world building only, not in
yeah,
gameplay at all.
because it's like a fantasy game versus like the Messenger is like sci-fi, right? Like,
I mean, Messenger's fantasy esque,
is it
and
okay?
it's like, I mean, both of them have like little brushes where it's like, okay, suddenly we're fighting a big robot creature. How does
Okay.
that play in, or something like that? So yeah, they kind of like span a bunch of time, much like Chrono Trigger, you know, also has time elements that lead you into a far flung future or something like that. So yeah. All right. Well, let's throw it back over to you, Cam, to talk about Frieren. Beyond Journey's End.
Yeah.
Is this the anime I occasionally hear you playing or watching, rather?
It depends. Is it the one that has an English voice
I
cast?
don't know. Like I sometimes hear stuff. I'm like, I think that's English, but I can't. Like, I hear it because it comes straight down the hall to my room.
Yeah.
But I can't always make it out. What I'm hearing.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. No. It is. It is one of them that I've been watching lately. I've binged this one the last few days to catch up with it. So Frieren, a little bit of backstory on this is that
Have you read the manga?
Yeah, I'm caught up on the manga. Like it releases a new chapter once a month. It's been extremely good, and I've been very excited for the anime. Just hadn't gotten around to watching it yet. Finally watched it and just absolutely fell in love with it again. It's a story about the elf mage Frieren, who's part of the hero's party that defeats the Demon King. And that happens off screen in the first episode. And the story is actually really about Frieren's kind of like growth as a person as she encounters. She's an elf, so she lives for 1,000+ years, and the point that's made is like this incredible journey that she made that took a decade to complete, and that they saved the world with, is 1/100th of her lifespan. And at the beginning, she is very dismissive of the impact that this journey will have had on her greater lifetime. And it ends with the first episode ends with the death after of old age of one of the heroes, and it has her break down and realize that like she questions why she didn't take time to get to know him better, and just the pain of losing someone for the first time in her very long life. After like not the first time, but like the first time in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Makes a massive impact on her and makes her re-examine her outlook on life. And this is the journey of her kind of coming to terms with that loss and what it means to make connections when in this world elves are Frieren describes it as they're entering a quiet extinction, basically. Because they're so long living, they lack the necessary reproductive drive that elves in fantasy stuff usually do.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, they've also spread, because of their nature of being very not wanting to be around a lot of like civilization that moves too quickly for them. They've kind of scattered to the wind. And so Frieren states that she's only met a handful in her entire life, and she probably won't meet another one until the day she dies. So there's that going on. And this is a world where there's the mostly humans, but then there's also demons and monsters and dwarves. One of the heroes in the hero's party is a dwarf warrior. And it's Frieren basically is just trying to make the connections of the people she has left. And then also like she ends up taking an apprentice. Like a lot of stuff happens over the first few episodes that then end her up on a journey that will, revisit old places she's been to, but also new adventures with new people. And it's a phenomenal story, and it's being animated beautifully by, I believe Madhouse is animating it. It's downright incredible. They've totally captured there's a very beautiful in its simplicity to the art style. A lot of times with fantasy stuff, even fantasy anime, there's some sort of like crazy outfit or weapons or anything like that. And Frieren is just as simple can get, as plain can get, and it is just absolutely phenomenal. It is beautiful in its simplicity and its straightforwardness and its storytelling, and it's about a life long lived and the journey that this woman has been going on, and it's great. It's just absolutely phenomenal. It's one of my favorite things about it is that strength and power are not conveyed through, overly exaggerated means. The most powerful, Frieren's the most powerful mage in the world, and she has a very simple staff and has like a very simple outfit, and then also her magic that she uses is, or her hobby as a mage is collecting eclectic and useless spells. She likes spells that have no greater purpose in battle or society. One of her favorite spells, that was a spell her master created just for her, was how to create, like, basically make a field of flowers, of any flower that the mage has seen in their lifetime. And it's something truly, like, truly spectacular in the way that they approach this idea that it's not about, like, also she gets a lot of these as rewards for quests and stuff. And so there's a lot of, like, doing simple things for people, and how the impact of the hero isn't on these big adventures. It's in the daily adventuring that these people do. There's a great scene where they basically have Frieren goes to, like, this dingy underground bar, and it looks sketchy and scary. And she comes in asking because she was told that people there had, like, knew where good dessert was. And these two guys who are, like, the scariest looking dudes in there turn out to be big sweet fiends, and like, help her out, give her some advice on, like, you want to go to this place, they have this dessert menu. And then it turns out that they're adventurers, and that they may look scary, but they're friendly, and they're out there to help people. And it's just fun stuff like that. That's not even like a big, like, long sequence. That's like a 30-second to a minute long sequence. It does these really great beats and character beats and story beats in moments that are building up off of each other in the most simplistic ways. And it does what a lot of fantasy, especially fantasy anime, like, they forget these small things for these big flashy moments, or these big impactful moments, that Frieren, the interweaving of scene to scene to scene, feels natural and useful. And there's a lot of, like, really great moments of where, like, something important's being said, but it's kind of being said as an aside. And so the direction is to not be focusing on the characters while this is being said, but kind of focus on the scenery. It's something that you see sometimes in film and television that's done when it's being done very well and very tastefully. And they execute it here flawlessly. Madhouse did an amazing job animating it. It's really, really good. So I cannot recommend it enough. If anybody out there is looking for a new anime fix that isn't so, like, super hyped up, high energy, this is the show. This is the comfy fantasy, like, fantasy journey show. So
Nice. I mean, just from the premise of, like, this is, after the final battle of Dragon Quest, of a Dragon Quest game kind of thing. We've vanquished the foe, and here's, it's Final Fantasy for the after years, only better, it sounds like.
yeah.
And then the other element that you were touching on, that is interesting to me, certainly, is the elven, because elves live such long lifespans, their reproductive stuff is different. I know I've seen a lot recently, I believe, with, like, both Matt Mercer and Brennan talking about, like, elves in their kind of, like, fantasy worlds dealing with that. Less so in that way, and more so in because they live such long lives, they have to be very careful, or just not give a shit about incest.
Yeah.
Because it's like, well, yeah, you're my daughter from 400 years ago, but you're also the only one around, and, who knows, kind of thing. So,
yeah, I read about somebody as a DM who built their elf society to be like a mask-based society. And when somebody asked about that, they're like, well, as you can see, elves in this world all look alike. Like, they're all descended from, like, the same elves, and so they all have strong, like, facial features, and so how do you tell them apart? And, like, that's kind of the idea around it. Like, elves can be so much more than just
Tolkien, kind of the template Tolkien.
I mean, Tolkien, like, here's the thing, Tolkien was revolutionary in his take on elves, but that becoming the standard, and then has been people have been so derivative with it.
Yeah.
And it's been so watered down that all elves now are just super cool humans with pointy ears, basically. It's the Aragon elf effect. That's like to point out. It's like
Legolas.
Yeah, well, the entire idea of, like, fantasy is, like, elves are just better. Elves are, like, you're good at this, but an elf is better at it. Very much descended from the Legolas being the incredible warrior that he is over Gimli and whatnot. So, like, very much a derivative of that, and this just plays into the after effect of because elves are so long lasting and long living, some of them become very powerful, and so they become targets of demons, demons in this world, in Freyren's world, are like not basically they are just monsters. So monsters don't have a society. They don't build up a society. Monsters are very much a part of nature, like other wild creatures or animals.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes for everything from dragons to demons. There's no greater idea or sensibility around it. It's very much like demons are the predator, like the apex predator to humans. Demons live off of eating humans, and so the way that demons communicate with people is in part. I'm spoiling some stuff now. I apologize, but
then don't.
yeah. Well, I mean, I'll just finish this thought: is that demons learned how to speak so that they could deceive people, so they could eat people. It's not like there's not like a greater thing other than that. They're very instinctual and don't understand the kind of like higher end processing that humans do. And because of that, they make some very interesting like opponents because they're like, it's just fascinating. The fighting, I will also put out there, the fighting does not happen very often in this show, but when it does, Madhouse pops off, and like the action sequences in the manga are incredible. Like the magical fights between two different mages is always really incredible, and it's always about not who's more powerful, but who's smarter and who's more calculated with their magic. Frieren is the most powerful mage, but she admits several times that throughout the story that like, no, in this situation, I'm actually kind of screwed because I am so powerful. Or, yeah, I'm so powerful, but all the power in the world's useless to a spell being applied this way. Like, it's very much like magic is not a one-stop fix for all things. But it's also, mages aren't very common either. And so there's something precious about magic in this world.
All right, cool. Any final thoughts before we move on? Nope. Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
So yeah, the other thing that we'll kind of wrap up with here, I finished Starfield today as we were recording this.
Let's talk about it.
We talked about it a number of weeks ago, back when like it was newer out, and both of us had hopped in and put it in a number of time. I ended up finishing the game at level 39. I'm not going to go into spoilers or anything like that, but ultimately, like, it just never grabbed me. We talked about that, I think, a little bit in kind of our initial kind of impressions on the game, and it's trying to do so much that it doesn't do anything well. Is where I like ultimately am kind of walking away from this game, which is like wildly disappointing. As a huge fan of the Fallout games, even Fallout 4, which I know started to rub a lot of people the wrong way. And there was a lot, especially over the last 2 days, when I've really been just jumping back in and just pushing through Starfield to get it done and just kind of knock it off of my like to playlist kind of thing. Because on much better news, I was able to Larian Studios fix the error, the game crashing bugs I was running into in Baldur's Gate 3, and I was able to finish my tactician run on that, and had a great time with that. Got the platinum there too, yay! But
it's been a big platinum month for you.
Yeah, it was Spider-Man 2, then a week later Sea of Stars, and a week after that Baldur's Gate 3. But yeah, Starfield here just like it missed the mark for me on so many areas. And I know we talked about it, and I very much just kind of reinforced this tweet sentiment in terms of like, it feels like a game that was made in a vacuum and is a game out of time. And what I found myself feeling a lot in the last few days, where I've just kind of been largely binging Starfield, is the realization that Bethesda's been making the same game with just different coats of paint since like Morrowind. And if you like that, if you like the coat of paint they're putting on it, like the Fallout coats for me or Skyrim, it can be a great fun time. But here, I just like, nothing was drawing me into any of the character stories. The side quests, I was like, I don't like when most of the side quests are just being prompted because I overhear something as I'm like walking through town. I don't have any interest in all I get is talk to this person in like an activity log, and that's going to be what like kicks off a side quest. I'm like, why? What is the reason to talk to that person? I didn't hear, if I even heard the dialogue, I didn't hear like what what they're on about, or what's trying to go nuts for them or something like that. So like too many quests like that that kind of like really drug it down. I mean, like I'll say, kind of again, not getting into spoilers, but like in the end game, it very much gives you kind of the Bethesda esque epilogue thing of, okay, you're at the end of the game here. Here's how these major story beats or these major faction quests or something are going to resolve based on what you did. And it's just kind of like you see a little like little dioramas of each of those basically that you kind of go over to, and you get like a few lines of dialogue to say like, here's how these characters are going to continue on or whatever. And it's like I had three of those in my ending, four maybe in my ending. I'm like, okay. And the because it's like it's in an interactable space, so you can see that there's clearly space for a whole bunch more that I just didn't do or was not exposed to and stuff like that. And I was just like, yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm just going to end the game here. It even gave me like a, hey, do you want to go talk to your companions or anything before before you wrap things up? And I was like, no. And let me just kind of like kick off, and it will then kind of feed into a new game plus, which is one of the things they've done here that they haven't done in other Bethesda games. But even the new game plus here is like was disappointing to me, because it was like, okay, I keep all of my ability points that I and like the points I've invested in the characters, but my 450,000 credits are all gone.
Oh,
My inventory stash is all gone. All my ships are all gone. All the time and effort I put into that past game doesn't carry over. So it's only my character. And like even out the gate, I'm like, all right, I gotta find new guns, and I'm going back to dealing with like an arsenal of just like crappy little 1-star guns, and I'm just like, I don't have any interest in really like following up with a new game plus here to go and make different choices or do different things or anything like that. Especially because so many of my choices in the end like barely felt that they mattered. Like there are some moments, and again, not getting into spoilers, but there are some moments where it's like, oh, okay, that's my choices led to that thing happening, or that person
hmm,
no longer being an available companion or something like that. um uh and even that ends up being like wildly disappointing in how it's handled,
yeah,
because the way that you interacted with that person might not be referenced ever. Like you might not have an option to like, as is often the case in these kinds of in Bethesda games. You might get extra special dialogue if you have like a certain skill check or something like that. Oh, I can do a persuasion check on these things, or because I have the kid trait or whatever, and
yeah.
I have my parents, I have like an option I can talk there, or I was I think in as I was like the Universalist Church or whatever. I was one of the like the religious factions, and so that would occasionally give me like a dialogue specific to that kind of like thing. And I just found myself wildly underwhelmed by, especially like as I was just kind of really the last couple days just kind of pushing through the main quest stuff to just finish the game and be done with it. Just very underwhelmed in terms of like what it was doing. There was a mission late in the game, like one of the last normal missions before really like, okay, now you're going to go off to the final end game stuff, um that did an interesting thing that came far too late in the game, but it very much was reminiscent of one of the best missions in like Titanfall, or or Titanfall 2 rather. And that was the same time that like Dishonored 2 had like the level that was very much like where you were toggling
Yes.
between like
Hmm.
dimensions and stuff like that. This has a similar kind of mechanic where you're like going through a base, and you're flashing into some alternate dimension of this base where like there was a tipping point, and in one version one character kind of sacrificed himself to save everybody else, and in the other version that character went a different way and everybody else died, but that character's alive. And so you're kind of going through and you're being like forced into, as you're progressing through this brace, you're like going from like the very pristine, still like intact kind of version of the place to like the very exploded version of the place, run down, overrun, where that character is the only one there. And like the biggest spoiler I'm going to give is at the end of that mission, it very much gives you the choice of like, when you put things to right here, you're going to choose, you have to choose which of these realities is going to be the one that like survives and you come back with. And it didn't give me any like in how it was laid out, the mission like kind of sets that up as the stakes and literally never put me back with the one guy who like sacrificed himself. So I couldn't even like get more of his story or deal with him at all.
What?
So like I'm like, well, of course I'm going to do the option that saves the 30 lives and not just the one life that I haven't seen in the last 2 hours, because that was another thing. The mission goes on way too long for its gimmick. Whereas like the brevity of the other ones in Titanfall 2 and Dishonored 2 was like part of like, it was a tight mission.
Yeah.
This one, you just kind of keep going back and forth, and in each place, okay, and in one place I'm getting swarmed by robot security, and in the other I'm getting swarmed by alien life forms, and I'm just going back and forth between firefights and that for way too long. And so just like even the glimmers of like hope and like, oh, this is an interesting new thing that you're giving me, end up being like wearing out the welcome or feeling half baked, and just come across as a disappointment again. And again, not getting into spoilers, but there's like a mechanic that gets introduced, maybe a quarter or halfway through the main story stuff. But if like me and like you kind of do a whole bunch of other stuff first before you kind of progress to that point in the storyline stuff, by the time you end up getting that other, feature, it's like, well, I'm never going to use that. Nope. And I almost never did, because I just didn't
need to.
It's very much like if you want to introduce that, like that should have been in the opening of the game, kind of, you introduce that piece.
I would say if you want to like compare it to something like Skyrim gets you that to you way faster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's the equivalent of like the shouts from Skyrim kind of thing. And it's like, okay, the shouts from Skyrim, like I used the Fus Ro Dah. I almost never used any of the other shouts in that game because of, the labor intensiveness to go and like get them and find them or whatever.
Oh yeah. Sorry. I was thinking about the more optimized on the PC build. That's why.
Oh, sure. But yeah, it's like,
that's another problem too. These menus fucking suck.
Oh, I finally got to the point, like, because I had done a quest line that, did net me like 400,000 credits or whatever. I was like, okay, so I'm never like hurting for money anymore. So the only things I'm ever like looting from bodies are credits and digipicks. And that was another thing. Like the digipick game, the lockpicking mini game in this is certainly like a more interesting puzzle based one than the like, okay, find the right spot and like for the lockpicking in Skyrim and Fallout. But the fact that every time you burn a digipick, it like in those other games, like, okay, if you successfully pick the lock, your lockpick doesn't break, but here they do. You lose that digipick. I kept running into places where it's like, okay, oh, that's only a novice or only an advanced. I'm not even going to bother like unlocking that chest because it's probably not going to have anything good in it. But then there's also a whole thing of like, sometimes you'll unlock a master chest and it has like nothing worthwhile in it. It's
that's
like,
another issue.
They're like the loot that they put doesn't match the challenge rating of a lot of these things. And so just like too much of this game is designed to be randomized and ever playable. a couple of, and I had seen somebody kind of call this out before as well. But I encountered it in my end game where it's like, you go around, you're going around collecting artifacts. It's kind of part of the game, and on back to back missions where it was like, okay, go to this planet and find an artifact, and go to this planet and find an artifact. I went into the exact same layout base and
Yep.
just followed the exact same
Mm-hmm.
path in back-to-back missions. The exact same generic kind of like, okay, here's the opening lobby, so I go straight across, I go down, I go into a big hallway where I can kind of crouch in, turn on the terminal, and get the robots to unlock and be on my side, and they'll take out the Eclipse pirates or whatever that are in this room, and then I'll just kind of go downstairs through a little cave area and get the artifact, and rinse and repeat the very next planet I go to. And it's like, that's not good design. Like, one of the best things of Bethesda games in like Fallout and Skyrim that they're often touted for is like their environmental storytelling, and like
Yep.
any place you go in Fallout 3 like has a fun little story to it that you can find in the terminals or whatever. There are so many there's just so little care put into the places in Starfield that like I, I it there was never any incentive to explore. And then also somebody shouted this out, and kudos to whoever did this kind of analysis. Like, the distance between everything is going to mean like, okay, you're just walking across an empty planet for 10 minutes versus like
Yep.
the people behind The Witcher very specifically were like, we're going to populate this part of the map that you're never going to go more than 2 minutes without like encountering a thing of note or worthwhile. Like, those points on the map are going to be very specifically placed so you're never walking through that much dead zone. But you go to any planet, you touch down, it's like, okay, circle around, the closest thing is 400 meters away or something. It's like, all right, I gotta trudge over.
That's where you got to unlock the
to get there.
jetpack. The jetpack saves you so much time.
I mean, the jetpack isn't like moving you faster. You can like use the jetpack to let your oxygen level race back, like come back up a little bit, so you can, as soon as you touch back down, you can just kind of keep running.
That's kind of like what I meant. Is like,
Okay.
you don't have to stop and pause when you use the jetpack.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's just
Yeah.
like there's just like and at some point, yeah, it very much got to a point where it's like, okay, I'm not even going to go into the star map or anything like that. I can just go into the menu and hit X to go, like, to have the path directly to my next objective done. All right, yeah, I'm just going to fast travel to that everywhere. And so I'm not even going to see half of the things that your character, your artists have designed to be just kind of generic placeholder things across this map. So yeah, like, I think right now, if I look at my top 10 list right now, I think it's like barely on the top 10. I think it's at number 10, but I can very easily see a couple of the smaller games that I just haven't gotten to yet easily dethroning and kicking it out of my top 10, which is wildly disappointing because 2 years ago, this was like one of my most anticipated games. But then it did get into a cycle of like, every time they were showing it off, they were showing features that I did not care about. When they were like, all right, there's going to be 1,000 planets. Like, all right,
why?
None of those are going to have anything of value. And sure enough, none of them have anything of value. Like, that, it's just the same like generic settlement thing. I didn't touch the settlement building really at all.
The settlement building is not really worth it. I got kind of heavy into it for like a section. Because I picked up 2 people that are introduced early in the story, and I was like, well, I wanted you guys to actually be able to like, use your skills. So I touched down and like set up a base for them, and they've been like, you make a lot of money doing it. But it has like, I'll put it this way: Starfield is a game of diminished returns. If you heavily invest into it, especially at the beginning, you just get diminished returns as that game goes on. I think a lot of people, when they talk about this game, if they invest very little into it and just are there for like going through stuff, doing things, then yeah, like you get those returns. But it feels like when you invest, especially up, like you front end that game with a lot of time and aren't going through the story necessarily. Even if you are going through the story, there's just not a lot. Like there's a lot of lore here and a lot of stuff to do this, and then so they never really touch it or use it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's really, you saying it was made in a vacuum absolutely feels like it was made in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Every single major improvement to RPG storytelling and RPG game design that has come out since Fallout 4 completely missed.
Mm-hmm.
If this came out at the same era and time as Fallout 4, I would believe it. Like outside of technology, like how well things work, maybe not, but it's just, I mean, it's like, there's a lot that I like about this game, but there's so many things to keep me that, like, I finally got through the hook of like what is actually making this story actually like something of a story. And honestly, it's so uninspiring that I have so little to no desire to go back and finish the game.
Mm-hmm.
The mystery box was opened and I saw the mystery and I said, that ain't much of a mystery, man. Like, yeah. It's not much. And it's not even like, I don't know. I get why there's like that new game plus hook to it now. And like, that makes sense to me. And I'm like, that's a cool hook, but
I mean, like even that, I mean, if it clicks for you, that's a hook. But if it doesn't,
oh yeah,
then it's just an endlessly grinding thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, at some point you just want to like recheck. 'Cause, I mean, it wasn't even like okay, go ahead and redesign your character now. At least it wasn't for me. I guess there was probably like a prompt of like, replay the main quest or not kind of thing. And I was like, no. Whereas maybe there it would have given me a chance to like reconfigure a character or something. I don't know.
But yeah, there's just a lot of like, especially when it comes to the RPG design of like companion characters.
Oh God, yeah.
And
I mean, like, especially on the heels of Baldur's Gate 3, like they were a 1 out of 10 compared to Baldur's Gate's 10 out of 10 kind of thing in character design and monologue or dialogue and companionship.
And what's worse is that they aren't even as good as like Fallout 4's companion characters.
Yeah.
This is easily the game with the weakest Bethesda characters, like side characters. Even Skyrim with their like 1,000+ companions or whatever, like 100+ companions you can get. Most of those are more interesting than the main companions you get here.
I mean, like Lydia will be a far more memorable character than any of the companions I got in this game.
And she literally, the only thing she ever has about her is that she's sworn to carry your burdens.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep.
She's, other than that, she's nothing of a character, and yet feels more real than half of these characters. And I got half of them running around my ship, which, by the way, it's called the captain's quarters. Stay out. I open my captain's quarters and I just see somebody in there. It's like, what are you doing in my room?
Yeah. I was going to say, so I finally started playing around with like some of the shipbuilding stuff and like, adding little compartments and allowing to get more people. But then I couldn't get more than like X number of people in my crew. Because the thing for like more crew members is like a 4th tier upgrade that you need to have dumped a whole bunch of points in before you can even get that upgraded the minimum. So I was like, what is this design even?
The game design on abilities of like skills in this game is one, I like half of it's good. I like that you have to use the skills to level them up. It pulls back in kind of that Skyrim style of leveling up your stuff. But the actual tiers of getting to those new abilities, atrocious.
Yeah.
Absolutely atrocious. Some of these skills are like borderline completely useless unless you are like, I don't know,
doing this very specific build or something.
And I have to do that just to get to having extra companions.
Yeah.
Like it's nonsense.
The other thing on the ship front, I thought I was upgrading my weapons because I was paying for the more expensive version of whatever I had. I got to some of like the last fights in the game where I'm like, I'm already playing on like the very easy kind of story mode anyway, because I'm not trying to make this a challenge, but I'm getting into dogfights that I should be able to like easily clean up. And if I'd had the base weapons that I'd had, I probably would have been easily cleaning up. But instead I had, I guess, stuff that was designed to do auto firing. So I could I would go into targeting mode and try and like shoot my lasers or whatever, and it'd be like, this cannot be this weapon cannot be fired manually. And I'm like, then how do I fire it? Because these guys are blowing me up right now. Like, how the only thing I could control in like my last few firefights was the missiles. And so I had like 4 of those before I had to slowly let them like recharge. And so I was just like, all right, shoot those and then fly away and try and run, because my auto turret things or whatever weren't firing. So I was like,
That's weird.
I don't like that whole mechanical side of things. Didn't make any sense to me, and was also just very badly designed and not explained at all. And so it's like, okay, well, if that's how that's going to behave, have a big warning or something like that that says like, hey,
Yeah.
you're not going to control this, and here's how it acts in battle or whatever. Because I was just like, I feel like I'm like out here without a net, and I can't do anything against these 2 enemies that came out of nowhere and are attacking me or whatever. And I like it. Like, none of the ship stuff ever felt good for me. I know you had a lot of fun playing with it. Like,
Oh yeah,
early on
I
and
had,
stuff
I had
like
a ton
that.
of fun with it. I think
But,
that
yeah.
ship stuff. But here's the thing: that ship stuff has a steep ass learning curve.
Mhm.
There is so many things, and they don't explain shit to you about it.
Yeah.
The
I'm
fact
like,
that
okay,
yeah,
what's the difference between a neuro weapon and a laser weapon and blah blah? Like, it's like, I don't. You're not telling me what any of these things do, or what
Yeah.
any of these things are good for, or what is the strategy behind this weapon versus this weapon? Like, are these supposed to be better against, like, oh, this is better at taking out shields or something like that? If it is, not displayed or clearly defined anywhere. So
it's
like,
yeah,
there's so many systems at play here, and they're just like, I mean, they're trying to do like the JRPG, or not JRPG, the MMORPG of like, oh, the community will figure out how to communicate it out to each other, or it's the Bloodborne bullshit of like, here's all of our stats. We're not going to tell you at all what they do, but the community will figure it out, and you can all like share that with one another to identify all that stuff. I'm like, I don't know. That's not how I play this game. This is not a game where I'm going to be looking at forums just to figure out how to build a ship. So yeah, just a wild disappointment all around, which is very disheartening, because I like it had such promise and just faltered. Like, the more I talk about the game, the angrier I am about it, and the
Yeah.
lower it slips down my rankings. Like, right now, it and Diablo are fighting for like the game I put most time into that I loathe for this year, because neither of them are good games. They are grinding games. They are games that are designed to give you endorphins in like the barest bones structure, and they didn't give you a story to back it up, or like compelling characters to back it up. And so it's
Yeah.
just like, both of them are just like mundane. Hey, if I don't have anything else to play and I want to do something while I'm listening to a podcast, sure, those are the games I can throw on, but they are just mindless nothing fests, which is, yeah, it's just sad, because they had the potential to be so much more.
Yep.
So want to both those. But yeah, I'm far more tempted to go and jump into a 5th run of Baldur's Gate. Still got to do a Minthara run. We'll see. We'll see if I hop around to one more go at that. Also, I will say, just like a quick little Baldur's Gate 3 wrap up. Tactician mode, super fun in terms of like the new things it introduces into a lot of like the boss fights. Like, a lot of the boss fights get a new mechanic or a new like feature or trait on them that like they only get in tactician mode.
That's cool.
So you need to like actively like rethink how you might approach this battle. In particular, like there were a couple where it was like my strategy that I use also in our IRL game of like, I'm just gonna run around with spirit guardians. If I did that, certain enemies would be like, all right, whatever radiant damage you deal to me, I'm going to deal back to you twofold. And so like, I couldn't have Shadowheart just run around and kill enemies with that, because she would get like taken out immediately. And so yeah, like interesting new ideas and mechanics kind of get introduced in tactician mode that were a lot of fun to play around with. But yeah, infinitely better game. Baldur's Gate 3. No surprise, it's reigning supreme as my game of the year, especially given some of these other gripes I've gotten recently. But yeah. So yeah, it was a week of very disparate games for me. Sea of Stars, great. Starfield, yeah.
Yeah.
So that is gonna do it for this episode. Cam, you can follow Cameron at RevCavett, 2 B's and 2 T's. What do you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
I want to give a massive shout out to two of our friends in the gaming industry who just got married this weekend. Massive congratulations to them. Everything I've seen from their wedding looks amazing. Yusuf and Belinda, hope for nothing but like the best and most happiest futures for both of you as you enter this new stage of your life and journey. So,
indeed, I wish Belinda I was sending her all of our love from Arizona here. I messaged her that on Friday, and yeah, everything I've seen coming out of their Instagram accounts has been lovely. Shout out to the Garcia McGeeds.
Yep. And shout out to Blessing for officiating.
Yeah.
Looking sexy as hell. Holy crap.
I mean, when you're a good-looking guy and you just don't wear a shirt, sure, yeah, it's not that hard. You just you're wearing a nice peach coat, peach like suit with no undershirt. Yep, not hard for him to look good.
Looking good.
Very much revealing that maybe he is shirtless Miles Morales, and not his photographer.
No, because Miles Morales doesn't wear a shirt. Miles Morales doesn't wear a jacket either. He's completely shirtless.
Yes, I understand, but you know, if he shows up to officiate a wedding, maybe he is wearing a suit. Yes, shout out to them. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey, in addition to shouting at our friends there. You can go check out my Baldur's Gate 3 stuff, not on Tactician mode, but we are in Act 3. What are we doing this week? This week we're doing a lot of Jaheira and Minsk stuff. So go check that out this week on youtube.com/thatnerdysite. And then I need to sit down and record some more episodes because that's all I've got in the can right now. Yes, you can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site or go to thatnerdysite.com. Also, shout out to That D Plus show where we were doing a Marvel month. Cameron and I talked about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 this last week. This coming week, we'll be doing our kind of Loki Season 2 wrap-up that I'm very much looking forward to. And then we'll be wrapping up the month with the first couple Tom Holland Spider-Men as we jump back into our Spider-Man series of That D Plus shows. So there we go. If you liked what you heard, once again, please remember to rate, review, like, subscribe, share the podcast with friends, all that fun stuff. As always, thank you for listening, stay nerdy, and be good to each other.